Hey everyone, Pastor James here. Welcome back to our discipleship series. As promised, we are adding another layer, another level to our Discipleship 101 and 201 series. And this particular conglomeration of videos will be called Discipleship 301, right? Makes sense. 101, 201, and 301. And really, our theme or our basic main idea here in Discipleship 301 is simply this: we're looking to fortify the structure. We're fortifying the structure that we built in 201. You'll remember in Discipleship 101, we laid a foundation, basic doctrines. In 201, we built on that foundation. And now in 301, we are going to fortify the structure that we built. So, welcome to Discipleship 301. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what to expect in this video series as we progress through 301. Basically, again, this is going to be about fortifying the structure that we built in both 101 and 201. We're fortifying that structure of faith in Jesus Christ and what that looks like, walking as Jesus walked. And also, we're going to, in this series, get off into some of the weeds. And I can't wait to actually do this. We're going to be doing some upper level critical thinking in this particular series because we're going to go way, way, way back. And when I say way back, I mean way back, like 300s BC, way back. We're going to start talking about some philosophies, some ideas that still are around today, even though they're thousands of years old. These philosophies are still around today, and they can be very, very confusing or even tempt the Christian to get off track. So, we're going to talk a little bit about these confusing philosophies. We're going to analyze some of these in light of the gospel because they're going to help us as we fortify our structure. If we want to have a strong Christian faith, we're going to have to be aware of some of these philosophies around us that want to take us down. And then finally, in this series, we're going to explore and learn what it means to explore and obey God's will. So I'm really excited about this upcoming series. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Let's start this particular series by exploring confusing philosophies. Sometimes I call these mixed signals. I taught a whole Bible study course on this, I guess about a year ago, something like that. And we actually called it mixed signals. We went through all of these uh, very confusing philosophies and looked at them, discerned them through the prism of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right? When you do that, when you measure some of these philosophies against the gospel and against the word of God that we have in the Scripture, it can become very uh, apparent that that you're dealing with a philosophy that misses the mark, right? So, nonetheless, some of these philosophies are very, very tempting to us, and it's good for us to learn about them. All right, with no further ado, let's move on here. So there are basically, man, there's a whole lot of these philosophies we're going to at least dip our toe in the water in. But if we could group them all together, there's something called speculative philosophy. We would call it, from a Christian angle of things, speculative living. It's all speculation. There's really not much of a faith, especially in God, element present. It's just we don't really know, but this is what we speculate on what life is like, what life is to be about, and how to live our lives. There are two primary branches of speculative thinking and living that still remain in the world today and can really pose a danger to the Christian life if we don't discern the spirits, as the Apostle John said. One of those branches is called naturalism. The other branch is called idealism. So if you could think of speculative living or philosophy as a big river, there's two branches that come off of that river. One is called naturalism, the other is called idealism. So let's talk about these two branches of the speculative river. And some of these terms you're probably not going to recognize at all. I've been studying some of these things for years and years, and it took me a long time to become familiar with the language. But even though you may not recognize specific terms, you're going to recognize ideas. All right. So be looking more at ideas than the isms, than the terminology or the nomenclature here. So two branches of speculative living: naturalism and idealism. Let's focus more on naturalism. This one is much more robust and even relevant still today. So, what is naturalism? That word may not ring any bells for you, and if not, that's okay. Let me explain what this is and why naturalism can be a real threat to walking as Jesus walked. All right. Naturalism, simply defined, is this: it's that nature, the world around us, the universe, the trees, sun, moon, stars, nature, everything around us in nature is the ultimate reality. In other words, this is all there is, all right? There is no God, there's just nature. We live in this confined world of time and space, and this is really all there is. That's naturalism. Now, many people would say then that there is this constant element of change that we see in nature, right? The sun comes up, sun goes down. Um, the animals progress in certain ways. There's this evolutionary thing happening, climate change. I mean, we could go way off into the weeds on that. We won't do that. But needless to say, naturalism says nature is all there is. This is the ultimate reality. And since nature is changing and evolving, that means right and wrong are evolving. That means truth is evolving. There's really no such thing as truth. All we've got is just nature around us. And we've got to adapt to that, basically. That, in a nutshell, that's naturalism. Now, keep in mind there are libraries full of tomes, huge volumes on what we're talking about in just like 8 or 9 slides here today. All right, so I am really boiling this down into hopefully something that's more understandable than just reading a 1,000-page volume on the definition of naturalism, right? But that's essentially what naturalism is. Now, we really saw naturalism come into its own during what we would call the classical Greek period, right? The 400s, 300s BC, this great renaissance in Greek Hellenistic thinking that still, it was so profound that it still influences us a great deal today. For instance, there were some folks called the Sophists back in the 400s BC, and these were really the first folks that I can find, at least, who very purposefully said all truth is relative, right? The morality is just based on social convention, right? And so the idea here is that if we break with social convention, if we just live life our way, then we're always right. So, how dare you tell me there's a right and wrong and that there is a morality? A lot of that goes back to the sophist. In fact, Paul in some of his letters challenges the sophist. You see that a lot in the Corinthian letters. It's underneath the surface. If you're not looking for it, you won't see it. But very much this was influential in that Corinthian church, and Paul really had to dig into the fact that, we're living this Christian life, and there is something called righteousness that we need to be concerned about, and obedience. It's not just everybody does their own thing. All right. So sophism. Also, you see people like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle come to the forefront in this great classical Greek period. And again, we're just boiling things down. This is not some huge, big biographical sketch of these people that we're writing. We're just kind of concerned with naturalism and dipping our toe in the water here to understand what they thought. But if you boil everything down that Socrates taught and said, basically, he said the chief end of life, the highest goal of life is knowledge, right? We need to become more knowledgeable people because knowledge is power, right? You hear that even today. And there's a lot of truth in that, right? The more you know about something, the better your mind is able, on paper at least, to make a good decision, or a well-informed at least decision about some decision that's in front of you. And so Socrates would say things like, know thyself, right? Who am I? Let's think very deeply about that. What do I know about me? And the more I grow in wisdom and rationality and reason, the more I can master the self. I won't be so dumb or stupid at things. I'll know me, right? And I can, through my own wits, basically, overcome the challenges that life throws at me. Plato was a student of Socrates, also in the 400s, 300s BC, said that the highest end of life is to become like a god, right? To become divine with this, and I capitalized the term rational, the ultimate rational spirit. There is this spirit of rationalism and reasoning in the world that if we become one with this spirit and turn away from things that are sensuous and sexual and tempt us to lust and those sorts of things, that we can be like gods, we can be divine. Now, what Plato got right, I think, was this kind of repudiation of these temptations that lure us into really bad situations, drunkenness and promiscuity and those sorts of things. But what he got wrong is this idea that we can become God-like, that we can somehow escape the bonds of ourselves and our finiteness and become one with this great rational type spirit that essentially rules the world. And then Aristotle in the 300s is right as well. Said the highest goal of life is well-being, right? To be well in your mind and in your body. And again, we don't as Christians disagree with that, right? We want people to be taken care of as well. We see Jesus was very concerned about the well-being of people. But Jesus went beyond that, right? That's not the ultimate goal of life. Jesus said that he came to give us life and to have life more abundantly. And he's talking about eternal life, a rebirth of the soul, not just having well-being or a sense of well-being, but having a peace that can only come with reconciled relationship with God. Aristotle is talking about something very different than that. In fact, he would say that the good in life, whatever is good and right, is that which is noble and beautiful, right? If something is noble, if something is responsible, if something's beautiful, then go after that. And moderation in all things is key. So you very much see with Socrates and Plato and Aristotle this idea that, well, we can't go too much on this side, but we also can't go too much on this other side of being sticks in the mud. But we can't go on this other side of just giving all of our life over to sensuous living. There's got to be this moderation where we finally experience wisdom and well-being and knowledge, and everything's going to work out. That essentially is naturalism, elemental type naturalism. In fact, let's kind of branch out a little bit more here with where some of the Greek people, and then later on in the Enlightenment period, 16, 1700s, how this idea of naturalism really began to grow. And in fact, we see it develop into what is called, what I just said, elemental naturalism. We also see a political naturalism and a religious naturalism. Now, hang with me, we're going somewhere, right? Okay, we're going to explore all of these different types of naturalism real quick. And then at the end, we're going to kind of tie up this naturalism conversation, hopefully with a nice, neat bow, and begin to dissect it through the eyes of the Christian faith. All right, so remember, naturalism. We're talking about that branch of the stream, okay, of what's called speculative living. We're just speculating about things. There's naturalism, and there's three little tributaries that come off of the branch of naturalism. One is elemental naturalism. Now, what in the world is that? Well, there are different ideas that the Greeks developed back in the classical Greek period that sort of coincide with this idea of naturalism at its bare bones, um, uh, uh, most what's the word I'm looking for? It's at its very basic form. All right. So there's elemental naturalism that we see beginning to develop with Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. All right. One of those is called hedonism. Hedonism. You've probably actually heard of that term before. Hedonism means enjoy life, just don't get too carried away. All right. The main motto of hedonism, even back in the classical Greek period, is a motto that was very much in vogue in Jesus' time, very much in vogue in Paul's time. They both quoted it. Um, it's very much in vogue even today in 21st century American life. Eat, drink, and be merry. Why? For tomorrow we die, right? This is all we get. This is all there is. You just live in nature. You were born in this time and place. There's nothing really you can do with it except live it up. Have a great time. Just try not to hurt other people, but live it up. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, it recognizes that there's really nothing coming after death, right? There's no cognizance of a soul, of eternal life. It's all about right now, this present moment. And I'm just going to do the best I can to enjoy life. You only live once, right? YOLO. That's one of the big phrases of our culture even today. That's nothing new. This goes back to the hedonists of the classical Greek period. It's elemental naturalism. So anytime you see that bumper sticker, you only live once, you can say to yourself, that's elemental naturalism. All right, like you would actually say that, right? But I guess you can. Okay, the next one is cynicism. All right, this is a little different than hedonism, right? Cynicism says there's no point to having fun in life. There's no point in having a good time. The highest good actually is to have no desire. I don't want to eat, drink, and be merry. We're gonna die, so why enjoy life? Like this is almost as depressing of a life view as you can get. Everything is horrible. I don't like life. I don't even know why I was born. And so the best that we can do is just free ourselves from social conventions and institutions and have no desires whatsoever. If you could kind of think back to the hippie movement in the 1960s, um, that was sort of a mixture of cynicism and hedonism, if you think about it, because they actually wanted to enjoy things, most of them. But let's do away with all institutions. Let's do away with all conventions. There is no truth. Let's get back to nature, that sort of thing. The cynics were very much like that. In fact, the Greek word for cynic is an ancient word that refers to a dog. of all things. So these were people literally who wanted to live like dogs, just random feral dogs and cats. Get back to nature, just live like a dog. And I guess if Grandpa was right, right? If you lay down with the dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. That's cynicism. All right, Epicureanism. This is sort of a watered down hedonism, but the same idea. We only have now. You only live once. Take things as they come. Don't get too upset if something bad happens to you. Don't get too excited if something really good happens to you. You just take things as they are. It is what it is. Um, Whatever is right is just what is advantageous for me at the moment. And so, yeah, it's really an attempt at moderation. We don't want to get too crazy here um, with being hedonistic, but at the same time, we don't want to live like dogs. So let's just take things as they are and enjoy life as much as we can. That's uh, still very much also in vogue in our culture as well. It is what it is. I don't control things, can't control things, don't have a voice, can't have a voice. So I'll just take care of me. Also, there's another elemental naturalist philosophy that's called utilitarianism. This was kind of a resurrected hedonism that came about during the Enlightenment period. A man by the name of Jeremy Bentham really came up with this during the 1700s. The idea here is that we're not trying to eat, drink, and be merry just to please ourselves. We're not going to live like dogs just to please ourselves. We're not going to take things as they are just for ourselves. He said there's got to be a way that all of us can enjoy more well-being. And he said, Bentham, what he called utilitarianism is we've got to utilize different tools to achieve the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. And we very much see this philosophy still in action today. Our politicians are really big utilitarianisms across the board into utilitarianism. The Republicans, Democrats, Libertarian, all of them. Okay, not to get into a political conversation, I don't want to go down that road, but there's a lot of utilitarianism, right? The politicians come to us and say, vote for me because I can help you, help us achieve the highest good for the highest number of people. If you put me in office, I can help you get there, right? Doesn't really work out usually because of a lot of issues that we won't go into in this video series, right? But that's what utilitarianism is all about. In fact, Jeremy Bentham, back in the 1700s, came up with a word that I haven't really figured out yet. He called it philosophic. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. Calculus. Now, I only got as far as pre-cal in high school, and I was pretty proud of that. So I really don't know what this formula is other than Jeremy Bentham in the 1700s was trying to figure out a mathematical formula for happiness. And needless to say, he didn't get there, right? He was trying to achieve a mathematical formula that we could apply to all problems in life to make us happy. He didn't come up with that solution as far as we know, but he wanted to achieve the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That was his highest good. All right, so that's elemental naturalism. Let's talk about the second tributary that comes off of the naturalism stream, and it's called political naturalism. Yikes. You're also going to recognize some familiar ideas here as well. There's one called Machiavellianism. Now, say that 3 times fast. But basically, this comes from the philosopher named Machiavelli. You've probably heard that name before. He lived back in the 1400s and early 1500s AD. And his basic formulation of life was very much political. Might equals right. And the mightiest people are the most right people, and they have the authority to rule over the rest of the nincompoops out there, right? So very much a might equals right. This is the kind of thing that we saw take on a radicalized form with people like Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, present day Vladimir Putin. He's very much a Machiavellian, has that kind of timbre to the way that he does leadership. Just I will rule with an iron fist, and that will prove that my cause is right. The more I can conquer. Not a very good that hasn't resulted in very good outcomes in world history. Another man, kind of in this branch of thinking, was Friedrich Nietzsche, or Nietzsche, German philosopher, lived in the 1800s. He was also very much a might equals right sort of person. That he said, we live in this natural world, and so we've got to use these resources in nature for our own advancement, for our own advantage, right? So he would say the fundamental goal of life is the conquest of obstacles. Man, something gets in our way, uh, off with its head, get rid of it, conquer it, have power over something. He would advise people actually to become a superman or a super race. Some of this informed Hitler's thinking, this idea that the Third Reich was going to be composed of a super race, and they were going to obviously get rid of all those races that they considered inferior. That's a radicalized form of Nietzsche's thinking, right? This idea that exercising strength is the ultimate right thing to do. And of course, Jesus would come along and say, you've got to love your enemies and pray for them. That would make someone like Nietzsche get red in the face and yell and stomp off. He would not like that. In fact, Nietzsche said, he's very famous for being one who said, God is dead, referring to the fact that he was rejecting all the religious, what he called nonsense of the herd. He called Christians and Jews people who were just sheep in a herd. They didn't know how to overcome obstacles. He was much more progressive and advanced in his thinking, and he just wanted all the Christians and the Jews to reject God because obviously nature is the highest reality for him. All right, moving on. George Frederick Hegel comes along in the late 1700s, early 1800s. And he is a much more toned down political naturalist, much more on the ideal side than Machiavelli would be, or Nietzsche. And Hegel would say, you know what, history is progressing. It is moving towards an idealistic end. And he would say something like, our present troubles are only pulling us towards this idealistic end. In fact, Hegel is very popular in some circles for saying that sin, the Christian idea of sin, he said sin is inertia. In other words, there's nothing wrong with sin. In fact, sin can be very helpful for you. It pulls you towards an ideal. So Hegel very much was an idealist, saying nature is progressing, it's moving towards this end. And so what we need to do with our lives is to remove the barriers, get these barriers out of the way that is slowing down progress. Right? You hear this a lot today, right? We need to get on the right side of history, people say. That's very Hegelian to say that in a philosophical sense. I want to be on the right side of history. That implies that we're moving somewhere idealistic and utopian, and we don't want to get in the way of that. We need to remove the obstacles of that. So there was a man by the name of Karl Marx who took this very, very seriously. And in the 1800s, Marx, of course, is very famous for thinking that we could achieve Hegel's ideal. We can really move history along to this utopian, natural system of things, especially if we overturn the economic system and engines that are just ruining people's lives today. He thought that through political and economic reorganization, man, we'll take this obstacle of economics out of the mix, and history will just propel itself towards this ideal. And of course, over 100 years removed from Marx coming up with all of this, it's still being tried, but it still is not working. Although it's very, very appealing to people because it hits at that humanitarian impulse. I want to help people, and I want to advocate for the poor and for the oppressed. And certainly as Christians, we resonate with that. We say, man, we want to help people who are challenged and down, and Jesus cared for the poor, and the Apostle James in the Bible tells us true religion is taking care of the orphan and the widow. We want to do that. But political and economic revolution and stomping over people and ignoring our own impulses and will to power, man, that's something we've got to deal with as well that Marx was not prepared to deal with. The pervasiveness of self-interest. Marx and Hegel really didn't have any cognizance of that. All right, let's keep going. These are just some people who are more present day influencers in terms of political naturalism. A man named Antonio Gramsci lived in the early 1900s, late 1800s. Said, Marx was right about a few things, but wrong primarily about economic factors. He said, we don't need to change just the economics. We need to change the hegemony. In other words, let's just absolutely overturn the whole power structure of society. And if we do that, then we'll progress towards this utopian ideal. We very much see that in culture today. That there's it's implied, especially among some politicians and political thinkers, that there's this cabal of people who are just keeping everybody else down. And if we get them out of power, then we can go into this utopian ideal. Paulo Freire lived also in the most of the 20th century. He said the highest goal of life is the liberation of the mind. He was very influential on some educational philosophy out there today. Michel Foucault, also 20th century philosopher, said, listen, truth is a game. Jesus, he would say, Jesus said the truth would set you free, but the truth, he would say, the truth, Foucault would say, the truth actually enslaves you. It's just a game that people in power, people with wealth and privilege are using to keep you down, and you need to escape that. There's no such thing as truth. And then another person who is still living today, named Kimberly Crenshaw, some of the critical race theory types of thinking that you hear, it's kind of pervasive in our culture right now, really debated and argued. She would also say something about truth, that it's basically just all relative, right? This is all naturalistic thought. Truth is grounded just in the radicalized power of people who are keeping others down. And again, as Christians, we resonate with that because we see people out there who are poor, who are underprivileged, who are oppressed, and we want to help them out. We want to obey the call of Micah the prophet to humble ourselves before God and to do justice and to walk in mercy. However, we have to ask ourselves, is there a real truth? From the Christian perspective, we would say, yeah. We would also say that life is much more complex than just who has the power and who doesn't. Life is much more complex than, if we just overturned X, Y, and Z, then we could have this utopian kingdom of God on earth. Life is much more complex and much more arbitrary than that. So that's the political naturalist thinkers. Now, very quickly, and we'll be done with our video for today, but I wanted to point out this third tributary on the naturalistic road. One is called Stoicism, a very, very religious type thought that the highest good is just in religiously setting your mind on the highest good. I'm thinking, I'm trying to be a reasonable being, my rational thought. I don't want to enjoy life. I really don't want to give myself over to my feelings. Everything just needs to be based on thought, fact, reason. naturalism. So I'm going to resign. I'm going to retreat. This is very much a mystical, what some Christians would call an ascetic lifestyle. I am removing myself from life. I'm removing myself from the community. I am withdrawing just to go into myself and into thought, and there I will find the highest good. That's Stoicism. Skepticism. This would say that truth is relative to one situation, right? So there may be a situation where it is, we would say, it is very much right to murder someone. But in another situation, we would say, no, it's not right to murder somebody there. And we argue ad nauseum about which truth is right and what situation this truth can truly be truth. And you know where that goes, don't you? That road goes down to ad nauseum debate and argument, and nobody ever comes to a conclusion about what truth is. So skeptics say, all right, so the best we can do in life is just to have a calm indifference. Be as comfortable as you possibly can. Just all the arguing and all the stuff that's going on in our culture right now, just be indifferent to it, withdraw. It's all going to work out somehow in the end. You just do what's right for you in that particular situation you find yourself. Yikes. Kind of a downer, isn't it? All right, next is Baruch Spinoza, who lived in the 17th century. He said that mathematical structure determines everything. So once you crack the code of nature, you can adapt yourself to what are some of the changeless laws of the universe. Things are evolving, but Spinoza would say that even though nature is evolving, there are some fundamental laws underneath that we can figure out through math and science. And when we figure those things out, we adapt ourselves to them and we live the good life. Voltaire, very famous for saying, hey man, do what comes naturally. Whatever comes natural to you, you just do it. You just do it. Very much a hippie, Voltaire was. Then there's also humanism and romanticism. Humanism is, as you can guess, very anthropocentric, man-centric. Human-centered says improve your well-being, do what's right for you, just based on what you've experienced. Humanism is very popular today in American culture. This is your experience. This is what you feel. Therefore, your well-being needs to be based on your experiences and what you feel. So improve yourself by what you've learned in your experience and how you feel, and apply that to your life. Very much kind of truth is relative. We're rejecting that. We're just embracing ourselves for what we feel and what we experience. Romanticism also would say, have a very obviously romantic idea about reason and thinking, that we can think ourselves to enlightenment and to the good life. Phew, we made it. Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? So we've talked today, again, about speculative thinking. We're just speculating, right? And there's two branches of the speculative river. One is called naturalism, and we've talked about three tributaries of naturalism. And so next time we get together, we're going to talk about the next branch that comes off the speculative stream. And it won't be a video this long. This is actually going to be a little bit shorter video next time we get together. But we're going to talk about the other branch that comes off of the river of speculative thinking and living that's called idealism. And we're going to explore that. This is a group of people that says, hey, we can escape nature. We can escape this universe. Through our minds, we can lift ourselves to a point of sovereignty. We can escape the finitude of our bodies, that sort of thing. So again, this is all headed somewhere, right? We are going to be exploring some of these philosophies and ideas that really are used by the evil one to attack our structure and attack our doctrine and attack the truth that we find absolutely embodied and taught by the Lord Jesus Christ. So next time we get together, we'll explore more of these philosophies, and then we will take some specific action steps on how to discern these and also how to apply these philosophies that we're talking about, how to apply what we're talking about to our daily life. So until next time, thank you again for joining us for Discipleship 301, and we'll see you around the bend. All right. Have a good time, good day, everybody. Bye-bye.